Today, we're joined by Deb Schmitz, Executive Director with the BC Hepatitis Network. Deb, thanks so much for joining us today and for talking to us about your experience working with Enkel. So you guys initially started working with Enkel in June of this year and use Enkel for bookkeeping, payroll, accounts payable, and controllership services. To kick things off, why don't you tell me a bit about BC Hepatitis Network?
Sure. Thanks, Robin. BC Hepatitis Network is a provincial organization that provides education, capacity building, and some advocacy work related to viral hepatitis in the province, mostly hepatitis C or hepatitis B. And that's from sometimes we're referred to as a patient group. We do more than a specific sort of clinical patient healthcare interaction. So we work with community-based organizations and healthcare providers and people with lived experience to build education capacity and awareness and do some advocacy and education with our other stakeholders, so government and health authorities primarily.
Excellent. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your background.
I started in northern BC in the 90s. I was working with high-risk youth. And we had a public health nurse who was just very attentive, and she came to Vancouver for a conference and came back and said to me, the people that you serve here, the youth that you serve, are a part of what is being talked about right now is the sort of the second wave of HIV infection. So I got involved in community-based HIV education at that time, and then hepatitis C came along in the early 2000s after the Kruger blood inquiry and some recommendations that came out of that. So I've been doing this work, so community development, program development, and then moving into sort of through that into executive director and then to the provincial organization.
Wonderful. So tell me about some of the challenges that you guys are facing before you started working with Enkel.
Yeah, so we have always worked remotely, and we're small at this point and looking at expanding. So we had a bookkeeping service that worked fine when we were still really small. That is, we started to expand. That it started to not work so well, and I found that I didn't actually have the term controller services until we started working with Enkel, and when I asked what that was and it was explained to me, I was like, this is really what I'm missing. So I knew I was missing something really important, and that's what it was. And so yes, yeah.
Okay. And so you said you guys have outsourced before. So what made you decide, even at the first go around, to outsource versus to hire in-house to take on some of these functions and roles?
Right. So that was historical. There had been a bookkeeper in place from the late 1990s when the organization first incorporated, and it was just very, very simple. There wasn't enough funding to hire somebody in-house, and the bookkeeping was very straightforward. And that just continued to expand and grow. And in 2020, I think, this had been ongoing for a little bit, that our original bookkeeper was very paper-based, and that was just becoming more and more problematic for us. So we really needed to have virtually based services, making use of all the really incredible apps that are out there and platforms that are out there that streamline bookkeeping and all of those pieces. So that's when I found our second bookkeeping service. And yeah.
And the second bookkeeping service, that was or was not Enkel?
That was not Enkel.
Okay.
No, we've had our second bookkeeping service for about 6 months, and I was starting to feel like we maybe would outgrow them fairly quickly. It was a sole proprietor, actually. We were going to outgrow her. So I did a search and found Enkel and had an initial conversation with Omar, and just decided that there'd been a lot of change recently, and I decided that we would stay with our current bookkeeping service for a little while longer. Yeah.
Okay. And was there ever any reservations or challenges by outsourcing these functions to third parties, whether it be Enkel or anyone else?
No.
Okay.
No, and I really, just to say again, like I really think that that part of that is because we are remotely based. We don't actually have a physical office, so everything that we do is done this way.
Mm-hmm.
One of our staff is in Winnipeg. None of us are close by each other.
Okay.
So the use of virtual means of communication is just how we do things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you actually find Enkel?
It was a search for nonprofit bookkeeping.
Okay.
And I am not quite sure why Enkel didn't show up when I was looking initially in early 2020. But anyway, they showed up again, and that's what it was. So there really aren't a lot. Like Enkel really was the only kind of full service bookkeeping service with nonprofit experience that showed up. And the testimonials or the case studies that were on the website that's really what really drew me in.
Okay.
I probably wouldn't have looked further if I could. And it was I can't remember the name of the organization now, but it was a name I recognized as a significant nonprofit in the.
Okay, good. So a lot of organizations, as they start to think about outsourcing bookkeeping and other back office functions, they worry a lot about what is it like? What do I have to do? How do I onboard? And how do we start working together? So you guys have just been going through that for the last, call it 5 months, 4 to 5 months. So can you take me through the onboarding process with Enkel, all the different things that you guys had to do, that Enkel did for you, et cetera, and just take me through that overall onboarding process, if you would.
The onboarding process was very well managed. Everything was clear from the very beginning. So emails, who was leading the onboarding, what to expect in terms of time. There was an initial meeting with slides that really walked us through every step. And of course, there's always a lot going on. Those steps didn't stick in our minds, but we had Lenny, and we could ask Lenny anything, anytime, and she would get us back on track, give us the information that we needed. We actually had a major glitch at the beginning of the onboarding, which meant that Enkel had to step up doing payroll. So payroll was supposed to start with Enkel on, I think it was payroll, August 1st, and it had to be done much sooner. And that happened. So the glitches that occurred, Enkel staff were just always. I came through the process with a great deal of confidence that whatever it was that we had to bring to Enkel staff, they would be able to answer it. So yeah, I mean, there were pieces on our end that we had to look after, and I honestly cannot remember the details of those things. But yeah, so some of it was simple, like getting Enkel signed on to the back end of the platforms that we use, so Xero and Pluto, and those are the two that are certainly the ones that I work with all the time. Mm-hmm.
So just in talking about that onboarding process, what was the highlight of it? And specifically, how long did it take into this onboarding process before you felt like the two sides were working well together, and it was fairly seamless transfer of information and working easily together? How long did that take, and what were some of the highlights of that?
I just have to make a clarifying question. By two sides, do you mean ourselves and Enkel, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Honestly, we were working well from the beginning. The instructions and the communication were so clear and so consistent, and we had great confidence right from the get-go, really, that anything that we didn't understand, anything that wasn't clear, anything you needed to backtrack on, we could just reach out, and those questions would be answered. So from really early on in the process, Enkel just completely kind of understood what it was that we needed, and provided that to us. So I think the communication, the very consistent communication using carbon task lists to help us, and the reminders kept us on track, because we really were not keeping the entire process in our minds. That was completely on Enkel. And if I ever had questions, I could go back and read through communication because it was so clear. And I wasn't sure I could ask questions.
Okay.
Yeah, there were a couple of really good detail meetings with Lenny, who led our onboarding, and I have an admin support person for 2 hours a day, and a lot of the detail pieces fall to her. And she just was thrilled every time she had a meeting with Lenny. She would email and say, "This is so amazing. All of my questions, all of the details that had just been kind of a black box for us before, was very transparent." So we're building capacity as we go along as well.
Wonderful. And it sounds like then, if I'm sort of paraphrase, it sounds like some of the bigger highlights were, one, just solid communication, and two, established processes that you just had to slot into to make work on your side and with your team.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. The established processes are just brilliant. Yeah.
Okay. And any challenges working with the technology? How's that been for your team and for yourself?
Yeah, for the most part, the technology has worked really well. We're very familiar with Zero and with Pluto. We're still fairly small, and we do some things a little bit differently. We do a lot of e-transfer to individuals. That's quite a bit of our kind of ongoing volume of accounts payable. So we still manage those. I think uploading to Dext has been a little bit tricky, but again, the support is there, and it's very straightforward for us to deal with that. And otherwise the technology has been good. We're still using our the time tracker that we were using before, and we're just looking at transitioning over to Payworks. Payworks has been great. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know it's still fairly early in the engagement, but have you seen any material results or anything that you can point to as, oh, this is now different as a result of working with Enkel? Are there any, whether time savings or business planning or focus or cost savings, anything like that you've already seen in the 4 to 5 months you've been working with Enkel?
I think it is a bit early, and there were some. We've had change on our end that has made things like a little bumpier than we would have liked. That's not an Enkel piece at all. But the biggest, so having the processes very clearly in place, having always knowing who it is that we should be communicating to about payroll or bookkeeping. Those two pieces have been amazing. The piece that has been critical for us is the turnaround on our information requests and any questions that we have. That's enabled us to stay on top of things at our end and have a better picture of where everything is at. I just recently booked some time with our controller, and that was absolutely, I think that is the piece that is going to be really a game changer for us. None of us here on staff have that level of understanding or detail. And she has a nonprofit focus. So she understood my questions. She listened really carefully. And again, that's been my experience with Enkel, and that has, as much as anything, given me the confidence and the ease that we're in good hands. So I think the business planning piece down the road with the controller will be really, really important. We're looking at a scale up. We need to have really good advice and really good guidance with that. And also capacity building with the board is a piece that I am very happy that our controller can provide that and has experience doing that.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's awesome. Any parting words that you've got for anyone else thinking about working with Enkel, or any other feedback you have that you'd like to share?
I think the focus on building nonprofit expertise within Enkel is incredibly valuable. And I mean, we have never been a large organization, so I don't know, I don't have a comparison myself for what it's like what that trade-off is. But certainly for a small to medium-sized organization, the bang for buck with Enkel back office is so much more, because you can afford a bookkeeper, you might be able to afford a little bit of accounting expertise, but this comes in a whole package for very affordable. The expertise that you get is incredibly good value.
That's great. Well, Deb, thanks so much for sharing your story with us today. I know that other nonprofits will be very interested to hear how you guys are outsourcing non-core roles and keeping everyone in your organization focused on your mission. Best to you and the team at BC Hepatitis Network. And thanks so much for taking the time to share your story with me.
Yes, you bet.
All right.